it's time to show some things that have been lingering around secretly. I think this video is to explain sometimes what's required to do things in the shadows without sounding like a shadow itself. That makes no sense. But what I'm trying to say is the pyramid videos with the mathematics and everything, and all of that, for many years, for all the years, the 15 years I've been doing it, or it's probably longer now, I have come to learn the harsh truth that it's just such an alien concept. It's hard for people to empathize or understand it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is not a bad thing. But the result is the embracement of the journey of going it alone and doing it oneself. So I have the feeling that this video will conclude the little series that I tried to make for now, and will shed light, though, on another lesson in this video, and that is requirement to complete a task or to do anything that is truly large scale in the odds of everything else. In other words, when there's no reward in sight and you keep going year after year, there's still no reward in sight and you keep going. And, you know, it's easy to say this once you're successful, but I am not successful, but I am still with this understanding and mindset. So I'm going to show you an example of what's required. Just a little bit of information for some people out there may or may not find value in it. What's required to do what I've been doing and what's required to try and build these machines. And so if I just switch everything around with the camera, because that was a bit awkward. I'm going to explain that in this box to start with, up here, excuse me, this is some paperwork of all of my scribblings specifically related to the machine. And it's not all of it, it's half of it was lost in the war. And so this is what's left. But each page that you see there is filled with data. And there are more. If I go into the dungeon and just randomly look at any, say this one, or I don't really want to mess it up because I have everything's compiled, and just like flick through, it's all jargon, you'll see that every single page is dedicated to figuring out how to build something, or the maths behind it, or the theory, or just ideas, or just madness. As you can see, many combinations there, but only one rings true. And yes, look, this is data that I'm sharing. Data, but it has no meaning, does it? It has no meaning except to me. And that is the way it is, because I'm between here and there. So it's going to eternally be jargon until, if ever, it's proven correct. Look at these great compounds here to create vacuum chambers, essentially, is what the highest end, except for that, polycarbonate and polystyrene plastics. Easy to come by. So, yes, this is one of many books, and it goes on and on. Anyway, look. So years and years and years and years and years of compiled data, shortlisting using logic and intuition, chasing something that may not even exist, may not even be there. I'm fully aware of that, but I continue to do it. Why? It's obviously something beyond me. Look at that. That's what you call a lemon gun. I don't know what that's doing there, but it is. I was showing a friend something. Anyway, there's enough of that. I will put that back so I don't forget later on. Now, getting back to this. The last few months, I created practically all of these. And what are they? Little shapes. Little shapes. They're little vacuum chambers. That's to simulate something. This is a laser cut vacuum chamber. And I'm trying to build one of the prototypes, but the case is always a problem. The plastic has to be thin, or the material. Yet, it has to be strong enough to withstand the vacuum. It pushes this acrylic case to the upper limits, and it just fails every time. This is a clever design that I made. It's laser cut with my laser at the back. And it was all flat, no mitered edges, just laser cut and put together like a perfect puzzle piece. How cool is that? An attempt to make it stronger, yet they all cracked. So all of these are attempts at vacuum chambers to build just one. Not only attempts, they're simulations to get the right version in order to actually build it when I do decide to build it. So they're all just tests. This one failed, obviously. You can see how thin it is. The corners keep failing, you see. They keep cracking. This one passed. Passed and then it failed, which is what happens. There are all values on the side of the data of what did or did not happen. But yes, this one's been reinforced by thickening the glue on the corners, making it a little like extra well, but it wasn't enough. Still wasn't enough. This is an epoxy cast with a curvature in it. It cracked. It didn't crack, I cracked it, but it was not strong enough. It flexed way too much. Values of this thickness, not very interesting. This is an epoxy cast in here. So you can see that it's yellowing already. That's what epoxy does. Annoyingly, but this is still ultraviolet transparent at 400 nanometers, which is what I wanted. And it will flex, but it will sag. That's the problem with epoxy, it sags. Another little vacuum test rig. Another version yet. This one's reinforced. This is successful. Obviously, reinforcements on the side, as you can see. Maximum reinforcement, minimum obstruction, but it's still too obstructive in theory to the actual thing. But I'm going to build it anyway because it's going to be... These cases are not expensive to build. These are littler ones. They're smaller than have to be, but you run the risk of getting a negative result. This is the same thing, but inverted. So it's flat on the outside, but all the reinforcements are on the inside. This one did survive, but again, it's one of the candidates, but definitely not optimum, but it's a cute little thing. You know, they all have little holes in them for the vacuum, which I take the plugs out to reuse them, but where is your hole? Oh, here it is. Up the top. Yes, that's where the vacuum is tested. This one did survive, I believe, but again, the reinforcement on those corners is very thick and it's so close to the frame, it is problematic. So I have rejected that one too. There are the values. Oh, what's this? Ah, yes, this was remade to save me doing it all again. That's why it says crack the first time. The second time are the values of how much it flexes, because once it cracks, it not only leaks, but it also flexes more. It's reinforced by having a fusion on the sides. This is another one, much thicker as you can see, but for a different design, which are over there hiding under that little blanket, secretly, away from the world and everyone and everything. And back to this one. So this is they. another reinforcement for the base this time. Has the values there, how much it flexes, 2.5 millimeters at 100% vacuum relative, and for this thickness, 3 mils plus 3 mils at, I don't know, 100 and something, 120 millimeters free. Here's another one, larger again. There's all sorts of funny values on this. It's only got a base, but the sides, again, it survived at 50%, but no, just they crack. They crack. It's so much stress on the corners. It's not the metals that crack, it's the corners. This one is using round supports on the inside, which I'll just say it now before I forget, the optimum compromise for an acrylic chamber of this design having this thickness of plastic, because I cannot make the plastic thicker on the sharp points, is the balance between a support on the inside and on the outside of the same geometry as thin as possible. So that is the best compromise I can come up with. This one, the support is a round disc on the inside, but to have one on the inside and one on the outside and to halve the thickness is the best I have been able to conclude with all of these tests. This one again is just drawn on for carbon fiber reinforcement theory. That would work. Very, very complicated and messy. Here is an actual carbon fiber reinforced unit, which will flex 2 millimeters, which is a damn sight better than what they do if they're not reinforced. But there's additional thickness here, which models it up. But they're all carbon root fibers glued in a really clever way, which I did using a laser, cutting grooves and putting it in, and then methyl methacrylate polymerized with the top and bottom, and that works very successfully. But again, it's an obstruction, the carbon, so it's just all compromises. But that was cool. So yes, it's pultruded carbon fiber, little bars almost in there, rod bar things. Again, testing the flexure of this geometry at this thickness, which the values are, oh, the sun's gotten to it, 2.1 millimeters, 4.4 millimeters thick, 2.1 millimeter flex, so half. Again, carbon fiber placed X and Y flat, same rod geometry, but just flat. This just way inefficient, complete messy looking thing, but yes, very inefficient. Of no use. A baby one for precious materials that are hard to come by. I made a little baby rig, but you know, it worked. This is for a cast epoxy piece, and other little baby pieces here. Epoxy cast with sand. Oh, that was a jig for something else. The price of how much it would cost to cast, if this is methyl methacrylate using Acrofix 192, if you cast that, it would be approximately $20 worth of glue. It's just a reference for me. You can laser cut epoxy, and that's the result. It sends out these god-awful fumes, but that it does work if need be. And that is a laser cut epoxy disc that I made. Doesn't vaporize cleanly like acrylic does, but it works. A little thing, a little internal structural geometry that I made and didn't quite. A piece of cast polystyrene in the oven, very, very dodgy. Very dodgy, but yeah, it's cool. Polystyrene is very easy to reconstitute or reconfigure using casting. Supports on the side, epoxy cast, and polycarbonate. This has fallen off. Test rig that got used so many times it just couldn't be used anymore. Let's double it up. Triangle on that side. I've used this rig more than any other rig. I've used it for hundreds and hundreds of tests. It is just so so used up. Fiberglass using methyl methacrylate Acrofix 192 glue to prevent the flexing, because it's all about trying to prevent flexing. The plastic will survive, but it will flex too much, and this one still wasn't enough. Fully cast epoxy pyramid blown to hell when I put it under vacuum. Very old. Look how yellow that is. Epoxy is so useful, but it does go yellow. There's no question about that. That's its downfall. Again, this is like getting to what I was saying with this one. Reinforcement on the inside. This is another version, reinforcement on the inside and outside, but using a different geometry, whereas this one was uneven. The one to do it with is even because it still flexes too much. And so that's just one panel. There's glass in here, which I've forgotten even what it is. It's packaged up for some reason. Tapered ends, I never finished that. Obviously, I was meant to have a cast here. Pre-flexure, or negative, what I call negative flexure theory, where you flex it so when it's under vacuum, it will flex back to its normal shape and keep going, but with flexure all over. It's very inefficient, surprisingly. That has nothing on the full vacuum. Again, fully cast epoxy flex, like thin. It's like a lens, essentially. In its geometry, inefficient. Surprising what I thought would work and didn't, and vice versa. This is just a thin piece of ECL30, which is a Loctite, E30CL Loctite product that was just cast for testing. Essentially a high-grade epoxy glue. This thing, a trillion holes cut with my laser, again to try and use that thicker and then fill it with another material. That survived without cracking, but gosh, it's such a complicated, messy thing. There's more in here, and then there's that thing which I built as another test, the acrylic. So yes, and there's much more, and this is one box, and it goes on and on and on. So these are all just like what I've done to try and find the perfect. To get it right, this is so damn tricky. This is all a compromise for what you would call synthetic sapphire, which I cannot afford. I cannot afford, and no company in this country deals with such a product like that. So it's double in price for import tax and exchange rate for US to AU currency. So yes, that is the what's been going on in regards to that. And this is, as I said, it's all just, I can see my face in the camera again. It's all just what's required. And so yes, so the videos I'll be sharing in future will be less on this and more on other very strange topics, which people hopefully will find more value in than the pyramid madness. Because it is, let's just face it, crazy. Only a crazy person would do that. But there's nothing wrong with that, because crazy people, they change the world, or they just die trying. And that's the way it works. You get lucky, or you don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've chosen this path, and I'm going to keep doing it. Until at least I have the prototype built. After many paychecks later. So brace yourself of what hopefully is about to come. In the true craziness that comes out of this brain, and essentially all the things that I have thought and seen and experienced and contemplated in the most hidden parts of this reality, the parts you don't get to see because it's so easy to be distracted, the parts that only show themselves for God knows whatever reason, to certain people throughout, or just people throughout their lives. I call it the subtle realm. It's a part of this reality, and it's where all the phenomena come from. It's the place the skeptic can never prove, but it's a place that must exist because for some reason it keeps coming. And I'm not going to make it into a series. There'll be just little films, like for fun, of me talking into the camera. But if I was to give it a name, I would call it Beyond the Black Mirror. The Black Mirror to me is like the ultimate form of truth. And truths which are so hard to come by and so rare that you would go lifetimes without knowing what the question even was. That's so much about it. You've got to know what question to ask. This is a rabbit hole which is going to go on forever, essentially. I can see it. But yes, it's my angle and take on all of the stuff that you don't get in reality. It's all the stuff that's left behind the scenes, the stuff that comes from the hyperdimensions, the stuff you experience at night in the dream state, and the phenomenon that does happen in reality, and what that means, what it all means when you have a little peek behind the curtain and there's some weird phenomena to follow it. It's like a joke, really. So go hunting after this stuff, and sometimes it'll come, but you won't go hunting if you're not already predisposed to it, you see. The two go hand in hand. And then there are all these other laws, like the New Age movement and the great many proclamations of what is and what's not, and the plastic Jesus syndrome, which I call it. The the lies, the many lies out there, and the many claims, and all the money that's involved, and all of that. Yet, for some reason, to remain humble seems to be one of the prerequisites to opening these doors and having these experiences. So, if any of that made sense, it basically translates to me sharing my own experiences for whatever value they might have in others, potentially empathizing or having similar experiences, or just for interest. Explained as least exaggerated as I can and as accurately as I experienced them. And yes, anyone can lie and make up nonsense. It's not what gets me off, because it's boring. Fiction's great, but not when there's a proclamation that something's fact and it's just nonsense. So this could all be nonsense and conjured up from my own mind, of course. That's 100% possible. But to the way I perceived it, it happened. And happens. And you can be the judge of the happening and how much actually happened and didn't. So enjoy the future. It's coming for you.